He never thought a small joke he made as a young man would follow him across almost 2 decades. Yet the memory of that strange moment stayed quietly inside him like a dream he was unsure was real. 18 years earlier, he had been only 19 years old, working as a junior mechanic at an outpost station on the edge of human space. Back then, the station was a drifting metal home full of broken machines, noisy crew members, and the constant hum of ships arriving with problems. He spent his days fixing engines and his nights gazing at the stars, wondering if he would ever do something important in his life. One afternoon, a damaged alien transport ship had arrived without warning. It carried diplomats from a peaceful yet mysterious species known as the Lumeri. Tall beings with luminous eyes and soft energy patterns on their skin. They usually never came near human borders, so their presence caused a rush of confusion across the outpost. The crew scrambled to assist them, and he was called to inspect their malfunctioning systems. When he entered the ship, he met a small alien child standing beside the damaged console. She looked around 8 years old in human terms. Her skin had a gentle blue tint. Her eyes glowed softly like warm lanterns, and she watched him with open curiosity. She seemed unafraid of him, unlike many alien children who kept their distance from humans. Her mother was one of the diplomats, and while the adults discussed repairs in the main chamber, the child stayed near him, studying his tools with fascination. She kept asking questions in her broken galactic common, trying to understand everything he touched. He remembered laughing at how serious she looked as she tried to copy his movements, even holding her small hands as if gripping a wrench. During a short break, she told him, with innocent honesty, that she liked humans because they were strong-hearted. She said her people believed humans carried fire courage, something rare and strange. Her words surprised him because humans were usually described as dangerous or unpredictable by other species. But she looked at him as if she saw something good. When he jokingly asked what she would do when she grew up, she said she wanted to explore human space and meet him again because he was the first human who smiled at her without fear. He remembered laughing again, telling her that if she ever found him 18 years later, he would marry her, as a playful joke. He had no idea what made the words slip out of his mouth. Maybe it was because she was sweet and sincere, or maybe it was because he wanted to lighten the mood. The girl gasped dramatically and lifted her small hands to her cheeks. She asked if humans made promises seriously. He waved it off with a grin and explained it was just a joke on his side. She nodded slowly, though her bright eyes looked like she was keeping the words inside her heart. Soon the repairs were done, and the diplomats prepared to leave. The child waved at him through the transparent door of the ship, pressing her small hand against the glass. He pressed his own hand back for fun. Then she said something he did not expect. "I will return when I am grown." He was too surprised to reply, and before he could explain again that he was joking, the ship departed. After that, life moved on. He traveled to different planets, worked on hundreds of engines, survived 2 minor skirmishes with hostile raiders, and earned a quiet reputation as a dependable mechanic who solved problems others avoided. He sometimes remembered the little alien child, wondering if she truly believed his joke. But as the years passed, the memory faded into something soft and distant, like an old dream. Now he was 37, living on a peaceful colony world known as Dawnlight. The planet was simple and beautiful, covered with golden grass plains, calm rivers, and tall silver-leafed trees that shimmered at sunrise. His shop stood near the edge of a small settlement, where he repaired everything from drones to farm vehicles. His life was steady, sometimes lonely, but comfortable. He spent evenings sitting outside his shop, drinking warm tea while watching the twin moons rise. There was a quietness he had learned to appreciate. On one particular evening, wind drifted across the grasslands, carrying a faint metallic scent, the kind that came when ships entered the atmosphere. But he did not pay attention at first because the colony frequently received visitors from trading sling ships. He was cleaning tools inside his workshop when his doorbell chimed softly. Expecting a local farmer with a broken transport pad, he wiped his hands on a cloth and walked toward the entrance without much thought. But the moment he opened the door, his mind stopped. A tall, young alien woman stood before him, her posture calm yet graceful. She was nothing like the small child he remembered. Yet the same soft blue tint on her skin, the same gentle glow in her eyes, and a faint, familiar warmth in her presence instantly told him who she was. Her beauty was not sharp or overwhelming. Instead, it had a quiet softness, a natural elegance that made her look as if she belonged among starlight. Her clothing resembled ceremonial travel attire worn by Lumerai nobles, light layers of shimmering fabric that responded to her movements like flowing water. She looked nervous, as if unsure if she was welcome, but there was also a firmness in her stance. She had traveled far for a reason. At first, he simply stared, speechless. He thought he was dreaming or mistaking her for someone else. But she placed a hand over her chest in a traditional Lumerai greeting, then spoke in a gentle voice. Her galactic common was much clearer now. "Human mechanic," she said softly. "I have come as promised." He blinked, unsure what she meant until she added, 18 years ago, you told me that when I returned, you would marry me." His breath caught. The old memory crashed back, sharp and vivid, as if it had happened yesterday. He remembered the small child, her glowing eyes, her innocent voice, asking if humans made promises, seriously. He remembered laughing lightly, thinking she understood it was only a joke. He managed to speak, though his voice came out in a whisper. I didn't think you would remember that." I joked. "I didn't mean for you to carry it." She lowered her gaze for a moment, but her expression was not angry. Instead, she looked thoughtful, almost sad. "My people do not take promises lightly," she said, "and you were the first human to treat me with kindness. I held on to your words because they made me feel safe. They gave me courage." He felt a strange pull inside his chest, a mix of guilt, surprise, and something softer, something he could not name. She continued before he could reply. "If the promise is something you do not want now, I will accept it. I did not come to force you. I only came to see if your heart still carries warmth, or if time has changed everything." He felt the weight of her journey, the years she must have waited, the courage it must have taken to cross star systems and appear on his doorstep. He invited her inside with a slow gesture, his mind still tangled with shock. When she stepped into his workshop, she looked around at the tools, machines, and faint smell of oil and metal, observing everything with soft curiosity, just as she had when she was a child. As she moved, he noticed how her presence filled the room with a calm, comforting energy. She was no longer the small girl copying his movements, but a grown woman carrying the memory of a moment he had almost forgotten. He made tea for her, unsure what else to do, and she accepted it with shy gratitude. They sat across from each other, at a small metal table, the warm steam rising between them. She told him about her life, about the strict training given to young nobles of her species, about her desire to understand humans because they fascinated her since childhood. She spoke about how she asked her elders about humans, how she studied their history, their courage in wars, their resilience on harsh worlds, and their unusual ability to create bonds across species lines. She said she always believed that humans had a special strength, not just of body but of spirit. He found himself listening intently, unable to look away from her glowing eyes. She was calm, sincere, and entirely honest. There was no trick, no hidden motive. She had carried a child's innocent trust into adulthood and followed it all the way to his quiet shop on Dawnlight. The more she spoke, the more he realized that the moment he had forgotten had shaped her entire path. And now she was here, waiting for him to choose what to do with a promise he should never have made lightly. But he also realized something else. For the first time in many years, he felt the quiet rhythm of his life shift, as if something extraordinary was suddenly waiting just outside the familiar world he knew. And he did not know what his answer would be yet. But he knew one thing for certain. His life would not be the same after this night. 18 years had passed. Yet Evan still remembered the little alien girl with silver eyes who had clung to his hand inside that ruined outpost. He had only been 17. A simple human engineer trainee who had crashed during a survey mission. She had been a frightened child hiding behind broken machinery, her world falling apart, and he had made a silly promise just to stop her tears. He had smiled, tapped her forehead gently, and said, "One day when you grow up, you'll find me, and I'll marry you. I promise." He had said it without thinking, without understanding anything about her people, her customs, or their laws. It was a comforting sentence. Nothing more. He had left in a rescue shuttle the next day and never expected to see her again. Now, almost 2 decades later, the memory returned to him in a way he never imagined possible. Rain fell softly over his quiet home on the outskirts of Orion Station. Evan lived alone, fixing ships, repairing navigation cores, and doing all the small jobs no one else wanted. Life was simple, peaceful, and predictable. He liked it that way. Humans told stories about dangerous alien empires and cosmic beasts, but Evan mostly dealt with rusty engines and impatient pilots. He never chased glory. He never looked for adventure. He had no idea that adventure was on its way to him. It was evening when he walked toward his door, hearing the soft chime of someone outside. He expected a courier or a neighbor, maybe even a lost traveler, asking for directions. Instead, the door slid open, and he froze. There she stood, tall, graceful, and glowing faintly under the rain. Her skin carried a soft, pale shimmer, her silver eyes clear and steady, and her long, white-gold hair fell over her shoulders like threads of starlight. She looked part human, part ethereal, part something the galaxy rarely saw. Not a child anymore. Not someone lost. She carried herself like a person with purpose, and she looked straight at him, as if she had known him her entire life. "Evan," she said softly, her voice like a gentle echo. "I have come." He blinked, unsure whether to speak, run, or question reality. Do I know you?" She stepped closer under the shelter of his roof. The rain dripped gently from her hair. She lifted her hand, slowly, carefully, and placed it on his chest, as if confirming he was real. "You made a promise to me," she said, her expression calm but firm. Every part of him went cold and warm at the same time. A memory, long buried and almost forgotten, rushed back with sharp clarity. The frightened child in the outpost, the silver eyes, the trembling voice, the words he had spoken to comfort her. A promise meant to make a child feel safe, but to her people, promises carried weight. "Wait, hold on," Evan said gently, stepping back but keeping his voice soft. "You're that girl from the outpost?" She nodded once. "My name is Selah." The name hit him like a sudden gust. She really had come back. She had really found him. Before he could speak, she bowed her head politely, a gesture that seemed to belong to her culture. "I have searched through stars, crossed borders, and followed the memory of your voice," she said. "I am here because you made a vow. In my culture, a vow made to a child is sacred. It binds the soul. And when that child grows, she must return and claim what was promised." Evan rubbed his face. This was not something he had ever expected to deal with. "Selah, I didn't know. I was young too. I didn't understand your customs." Her eyes softened. "I know, but I still came. Because your words saved me. They protected me, and they shaped My future. He looked at her again, really looked. She wasn't forceful. She wasn't angry. And she didn't look like someone demanding repayment. She looked hopeful, nervous, a bit uncertain under her calm voice. And that made his chest tighten. She wasn't here out of power or law. She was here because something he had done long ago had mattered to her. Come inside, Evan said finally. You shouldn't stand in the rain. Sayla followed him quietly. Her steps were soft and elegant, and she looked around with curiosity, as if this small home was something precious. She lowered her hand slowly along the smooth surface of the wall, almost studying it. This place reflects you, she said softly. Quiet, honest, kind. Evan wasn't sure how to respond to that. He handed her a towel, unsure whether she even needed it. To his surprise, she took it with both hands, as if accepting a gift of great value. She dried her hair carefully, then folded the towel with incredible precision and handed it back. You don't have to be that formal, he said. She blinked. Formality is how we show respect, but I will learn your way. She studied him, her silver eyes warm but curious. You look older. That happens, he said with a small laugh. Humans age. You're still the same. She replied softly. Your voice carries the same gentle echo it did when I was little. He felt his heart shift slightly at the sincerity in her tone. They sat across from each other at a small table. The rain outside became a soft hum. Sayla kept watching him like someone studying a star map, trying to memorize every detail. Tell me what happened after the outpost, Evan said. I want to know. She nodded slowly. My people rescued me. They rebuilt our home. But the promise you made, it guided my years. I trained hard, studied your language, and learned your customs. My elders told me not to rely on the vow. They said humans forget. But I remembered your kindness. And kindness must be answered. Her voice dropped slightly. I feared you might reject me, or that you had given that promise to many others, or that you no longer cared. Her honesty surprised him. Sayla, I didn't mean to hurt you, he said. She shook her head gently. You did not hurt me. You saved me. You gave me hope. I grew strong because I believed someone in the universe cared about me. Evan leaned back, overwhelmed. She had built 18 years of her life around a moment he barely remembered. She wasn't manipulating him. She wasn't here for power or wealth. She wasn't demanding anything. She was simply holding on to something pure, something he had forgotten but she had treasured. He breathed, slowly. Sayla, what do you want from me now? Her answer was soft. Time. Understanding. And the chance to show you the person I became because of you. She did not mention marriage again. It was as if she understood humans needed space to breathe. Before Evan could speak again, a sharp flash burst outside the window. Sayla's posture changed instantly. Her eyes narrowed, her shoulders straightened, and she looked toward the door as if her instincts were warning her. That is not natural thunder, she said calmly. Evan frowned. Another flash followed, then a distant rumble like ships descending fast. Is someone after you? He asked, his voice growing tense. She didn't answer for a moment. She simply stood and placed one hand lightly against the wall, feeling the vibration of the atmosphere with senses humans didn't have. They followed me, she whispered. I hoped they wouldn't. I hoped I could speak to you freely before they arrived. Evan stood as well. Who are they? She met his eyes, a quiet determination forming in her gaze. My people. They believe the vow binds you to us. They want to bring you to our world so you can fulfill it through their rules. Not mine. Evan felt a chill. Are they dangerous? They are traditional, she said carefully, and tradition can be heavy. Outside, bright blue lights flashed across the clouds. Multiple shapes descended, sleek, sharp ships belonging to a race far more advanced than humans. Too many to be a friendly visit. Too precise to be peaceful. Sayla, what do we do? Evan asked quietly. She stepped toward him, her expression calm but filled with resolve. You trust me, she whispered. Because 18 years ago, I trusted you. She lifted her hand gently, not forcing, not demanding, just offering. The ships drew closer, their engines shaking the air. Evan looked at her hand, then into her steady silver eyes. And he realized something. This wasn't just about a promise. This was about a connection neither of them fully understood yet. He took her hand. Sayla exhaled softly, almost relieved. The door shook as the first landing craft touched the ground outside. Sayla squeezed his hand gently. No matter what happens next, I will not let them harm you. Evan nodded, heart pounding. Then we face this together. As the shadows of the alien ships spread across his home, Evan stood beside her not because of a promise, but because something inside him told him that this meeting was no accident. They faced the storm together, hand in hand, and neither of them planned to run. When Ethan was 12 years old, he was the kind of boy who joked about everything. He joked when he was nervous, he joked when he was scared, and he joked when he did not understand something. On that one strange night, he also joked because he could not believe what he was seeing. The sky above the empty field behind his house had opened like a quiet silver curtain. A small craft, glowing only faintly, had landed on the soft dirt. Ethan had stared at it with wide eyes, thinking he was dreaming or maybe imagining too much after watching late-night science shows. But the hatch opened, and a child stepped out, small, thin, and shaped like a human, but with pale silver skin that reflected moonlight like water. Her eyes were large and soft, full of fear, confusion, and loneliness. She looked no older than him. She clutched a small metal cube to her chest, like it was the only thing keeping her safe. Ethan had wanted to run, to shout for help, but she looked so frightened that he stayed. She spoke in a trembling voice, in a language he didn't know, yet somehow he understood the feeling behind it. She was lost. She was alone. She needed help. He offered her his hand, shaking a little but trying to smile. She hesitated, but eventually placed her hand in his. Her fingers were cold, like she had been traveling through space for too long. He led her into the trees to hide, just in case someone saw the ship. They sat under the old pine, and she slowly relaxed. She pressed the metal cube and suddenly spoke English, broken, childlike English. But it made Ethan blink in surprise. She told him her name was Lyra. She said her escape pod had been separated from her family's ship. She said she had been searching for a safe place to land. She said she was scared. Ethan tried to comfort her the only way he knew, by talking too much. He talked about school, about his dog, about how he hated math but loved comic books. Lyra listened quietly, her large eyes softening every time he tried to make her laugh. At one point, when he stood up too fast and slipped on a rock, she giggled for the first time. Ethan felt strangely proud, but they both knew she could not stay. The moon was high when the sky suddenly shimmered again. Another ship appeared above them, larger, elegant, silent. Lyra stood up, clutching the cube as if it were her heart. She looked at Ethan with worry, sadness, and something that felt larger than her small age. The tall figures who stepped from the craft were gentle. They wrapped Lyra in a glowing cloth and spoke to Ethan in calm voices. They thanked him for giving her safety, for showing her kindness. They said she had never met a human child before. They said she would remember him. Ethan, nervous and overwhelmed, blurted out, "It's okay. She can marry me when we grow up." He meant it as a joke. A childish, silly joke. Everyone knew kids said crazy things. The alien stared at him, confused at first, and then thoughtful. Lyra tilted her head, her small expression curious. She touched Ethan's hand one last time, and then she was carried up the ramp. The ship lifted off, leaving only a ripple of wind pine needles swirling around him, and his heart racing. Ethan went home not really believing what happened. His parents did not believe his story. He eventually convinced himself it was a dream, just a very vivid dream from his childhood. Life continued. He grew older. He finished school. He got a job. He worked in a repair shop, fixing machines and appliances, living quietly, and never expecting something strange to return to him. 18 years passed. He remembered the dream sometimes, especially when he looked at the old pine tree behind the field. But he never thought about his childish joke. He barely remembered saying it. Then one evening, when rain fell softly against his small apartment window, someone knocked on the door. It was a gentle, steady knock, not hurried, not timid, but certain. Ethan wiped his hands and opened the door, expecting a neighbor needing help with something. But the person standing there was unlike anyone he had ever seen on Earth. A young woman with pale silver skin, soft natural beauty, and eyes full of calm determination looked at him. Her clothes were simple, but woven with unusual designs. Her hair shimmered faintly like strands of moonlit metal. She held a familiar metal cube in her hand. Ethan froze. She spoke softly. "Ethan, I have come. It has been 18 years. I am grown now. I remember your promise." He felt the world tilt. His breath caught. For a long moment, he could not speak, because his childhood dream, something he had buried deep, was suddenly real, and standing at his door. And she was waiting for him. Part 2. Ethan stood motionless at the doorway, unsure whether he was awake or trapped inside some vivid dream. Rain continued to fall behind her, forming a silvery curtain that made her look like she had stepped out of another world. She waited patiently, her expression calm but full of meaning. When Ethan finally stepped aside, she entered the room with quiet grace, her eyes moving around with curiosity, but without fear. He offered her a seat, but she stood for a moment, observing every corner of the small apartment. She seemed to memorize the details: the worn couch, the repair tools on the table, the old magazines stacked near the window. Everything seemed to matter to her, as if she had imagined this place for many years and wanted to confirm it was real. Ethan cleared his throat and finally found his voice. You're Lyra?" She nodded, her silver hair catching the dim light. "Yes, I am Lyra. You helped me when we were children. I have come because you made a promise." Ethan winced. It was a joke. I was 12. Lyra held the cube in both hands, her fingers gentle but firm. "In my culture, promises made between young ones carry deep importance. Words spoken in trust, even in innocence, become bonds. I was told humans sometimes speak lightly, but I believed your promise." Her voice was not angry. It was soft, steady, and full of sincerity. That made Ethan feel worse. He sat down slowly, unsure how to explain something so simple, yet so impossible. "I didn't know your people took things that seriously," he said quietly. Lyra stepped closer. "I spent 18 years preparing to return. I learned your language. I learned your customs. I asked my elders what it means for humans to choose partners. I was told that a promise from the heart matters most. I believed your promise came from kindness." Ethan rubbed his forehead. He remembered her clearly now, the frightened child who had clung to him, the soft laughter when he slipped on that rock, the shy way she held his hand before leaving. He had only tried to comfort her. The joke had just slipped out. He had never imagined she would treat it as truth. Lyra finally sat on the couch, her movements careful, almost ceremonial. She looked at him with calm patience. "I am not here to force anything. I only came because it was time. If you do not want the bond, I will accept your choice. But I wanted to meet you again. I wanted you to know I did not forget." Something in Ethan softened. She was not demanding. She was not here to control anything. She was simply honoring something she had held close since childhood. That sincerity touched him deeply. He took a slow breath. "Can we talk first? I mean, get to know each other?" A warm expression, almost like a smile, touched her face. "I would like that." "We." Ethan made tea, unsure if she would like it. She tasted it carefully, her eyes widening at the warmth and the flavor. She smiled again, this time more fully, and Ethan felt a strange sense of peace settle between them. They talked for hours. She told him about her world, a quiet planet with soft oceans and glowing forests. Her people were peaceful, skilled in healing, science, and long memory. She told him about the escape pod accident that had separated her from her family that night. She told him how they searched for the human boy who had saved her. But Earth had been too far and too dangerous to return to until she was grown. She explained that the cube she held was a memory keeper. It stored voices, faces, moments. She pressed it once, and a small hologram appeared, tiny Lyra, laughing at 12-year-old Ethan's clumsy fall. Ethan felt embarrassment rush to his face, but Lyra's soft laugh made him relax. She then showed him a much older recording herself at different ages, learning languages, training, preparing, waiting. She had lived her entire life with the thought of returning to him. Ethan found himself speechless. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle. "Lyra, you're not a child anymore. Things are different now. You grew up with this promise, but I didn't. I barely remembered it until now." "I know," she said softly. "I came only to ask what you want now, not what you wanted then." Silence stretched between them, long, thoughtful, almost fragile. Ethan realized that she was giving him freedom, even though she had built her life around that promise. She was not trying to bind him. She was simply offering him a choice. He studied her face. She was calm, patient, and sincerely kind, qualities rare on Earth, at least in the hectic life he had grown used to. The quiet strength in her eyes reminded him of that childhood night under the pine tree. She had trusted him then. She trusted him now. He felt something shift inside him, not love, not yet, but a gentle warmth, something like possibility. "I want you to stay for a while," he said finally. "Not because of the promise, but because I want to understand you. I want to know who you became." Lyra's expression softened with relief. "Then I will stay." For the first time in a long while, Ethan's small apartment didn't feel lonely. He didn't know what the future held, but he felt certain of one thing. His life had just changed in a way he never expected. Part 3. Lyra stayed in Ethan's apartment, and the days slowly grew into a quiet routine that felt strangely natural. She was curious about everything: Earth's food, Earth's skies, Earth's noises, even the soft hum of Ethan's old refrigerator. She asked gentle questions, never rushing, always wanting to understand. Ethan found himself answering with patience he didn't know he had. They walked through the city together. Lyra kept her hood up to hide her silver skin, but her eyes were full of wonder. She paused at small things humans ignored: flowers pushing through sidewalk cracks, children playing in the rain, the sound of a guitar from an open window. She watched everything as if the world were a gift made just for her. Ethan began to enjoy showing her things. He showed her how to buy groceries, how to use a microwave, how to hold a pencil, how to read signs. She learned quickly, absorbing information like a sponge. She even helped him in the repair shop. Her delicate hands were surprisingly skilled at fixing tiny components, and customers often complimented Ethan for suddenly doing cleaner work. In the evenings, they talked for hours. Lyra told him about her people, their long lives, their gentle traditions, their belief that bonds made in youth shape the heart. She spoke about how her elders had told her the promise would either lead her to a future partner or to a deeper understanding of humans. Either path was important. Ethan told her about Earth, its chaos, its noise, its beauty, its harshness. He explained how humans often joked to hide feelings, how promises were sometimes made lightly, and how life moved fast, sometimes too fast for people to understand themselves. Lyra listened to him with deep attention, as if each of his words carried weight. Her presence made Ethan more honest, more thoughtful. He found himself sharing things he had kept buried. Old fears, childhood loneliness, the pressure of growing up without knowing his purpose. She never judged him. She accepted everything with quiet understanding. One night, while they sat on the rooftop under the stars, Lyra looked up at the sky and said, "My people are returning soon. They will come to take me home. They will expect me to bring an answer. Numberboard, including luxes, including look to meeting loses, including luxes, including loking lows, including look to meeting luxes." Ethan felt a sudden tightness in his chest. An answer to what? "To the promise," she said softly. "To us." He swallowed, unsure how to speak. A part of him wanted her to stay forever. Another part feared making a choice that would change both their lives. "I don't want to decide too quickly," he admitted. "Not because I don't care, but because I do." Lyra looked at him gently. "Then let us spend the time we have. Let us understand each other more." The following days became even more meaningful. They cooked together, walked through parks, visited small street markets, and watched old movies. Lyra's laughter was light and warm, and every time she smiled at something new, Ethan felt a quiet joy grow in him. One afternoon, a small accident occurred in the workshop. A machine sparked dangerously, and Ethan instinctively stepped in front of Lyra to shield her. She touched his shoulder afterward, her expression full of something deep and bright. "You protect without thinking," she whispered. Just like before. Ethan felt heat rise to his face, but he didn't pull away. Her hand stayed on his shoulder a moment longer than necessary, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Trust, gratitude, maybe something more. That night, Lyra brought out the cube again. She pressed it gently, and a soft glow filled the room. A hologram appeared, two small figures under a pine tree. Ethan as a child, and Lyra, clutching his hand. She looked at the memory softly. "You were the first human I ever met," she said. "And you were kind to me, even when you were afraid." Ethan's voice was quiet. "I didn't know what else to do. That kindness shaped me," she said. "It made me want to understand humans. It made me want to return. But the choice is not mine alone. It must be shared." Ethan looked at her. Truly looked at her. The calm strength in her eyes. The gentle way she carried herself. The quiet hope she never forced onto him. She was not asking him to fulfill a childish promise. She was asking him to choose her now, as adults, with understanding. He felt his heart beat slower and deeper. "I need time," he said honestly. "But I don't want you to leave without knowing how much you matter to me." A soft warmth lit her face. She placed her hand over his. "Then let us wait for the right moment together." But just as they began to settle into this peaceful understanding, the sky above the city trembled one early morning. A streak of silver light flashed across the clouds, and Lyra stood up sharply, her eyes full of recognition. "They are here," she whispered. Ethan felt his breath catch. The moment of decision had arrived sooner than either of them expected. When Ethan Hale was 18, he traveled with an exploration team to a peaceful alien village on the edge of a small moon. He was the youngest human in the group and treated everything like an adventure. The mission was simple: help repair water filters, deliver supplies, and learn about the culture of the gentle, small tribe that lived there. One day, while sharing food with the villagers, Ethan made a light joke, something he thought was silly and harmless. A tiny alien girl, with bright silver eyes, asked him why humans liked rings so much. He laughed and said, It's something humans give when they make a promise to marry. Maybe someday you'll grow up and ask for one. The girl, amused and curious, held out a little flower ring she had made from glowing leaves. Ethan laughed again, accepted it, and said, "Then I promise. When you grow up, if you remember me, come find me." Everyone took it as a playful, cultural exchange. The girl was a child, and Ethan was just joking. The adults of her village laughed, telling Ethan that their people valued humor. Nothing serious was said, nothing serious was meant, and when the mission ended, Ethan returned to Earth and lived his life like anyone else. Years passed. Ethan forgot about the tiny girl. He completed his studies, trained as an engineer, helped build orbital stations, worked for colonies, and then settled into a quiet life in a peaceful corner of Earth. Sometimes he remembered the moon village, but only in the way someone remembers a school trip, warm, distant, and without any expectation that the past would walk back into the present. But 18 years after that joking moment, something happened that made Ethan stop in confusion. The moment he opened his front door, a tall young woman stood outside. Her silver eyes glowed gently in the afternoon light, the same strange shade Ethan remembered from long ago. Her hair had deep blue strands woven with thin crystal threads that shimmered when the light touched them. She looked calm but determined, and she held a small bag made from the same glowing leaves the children used for crafts. Ethan blinked twice, thinking she must be at the wrong door. But then she spoke softly, her voice smooth and steady, and said words he never expected to hear. "I have come for the promise." Ethan froze, not understanding. He thought she meant a package, a delivery, or some sort of paperwork. But the young woman stepped forward, lifted her hand, and revealed something small and fragile inside her palm, a tiny glowing flower ring. And Ethan instantly remembered. He didn't know what to say. The memory of that silly childhood moment, of him joking with a small alien girl, came rushing back like a wave crashing against the shore of his mind. The young woman introduced herself as Lyra. She explained that she was the same child he had met 18 years ago. She had grown into adulthood according to her planet's customs, and she had traveled across space to fulfill the ancient practice of her people. In her culture, a spoken promise, even a joke, was taken seriously if the other person accepted a symbolic item with sincerity. Ethan remembered he accepted the flower ring with a smile but had no idea that their culture interpreted that as a bond between two families. Ethan tried to explain that humans sometimes make playful promises without deep meaning, especially with children. But Lyra looked at him with sincere determination. She wasn't angry. She wasn't demanding. She wasn't forcing anything. She simply believed he had made a real promise, and she had built her life expecting this moment. She had learned human language, studied the patterns of Earth, trained to live among humans. All because she thought the person who promised her the future would be there when she came of age. Ethan felt a strange mix of guilt, confusion, and responsibility. He had not meant harm. He had not expected any of this. For him, it had been a joke. For her, it had become the path of her life. He invited her inside to talk. Lyra walked into his house with cautious steps, observing everything with quiet curiosity. She asked gentle questions about Earth life, about the reason humans joked about important things, about why promises did not always bind the heart. Ethan explained as simply as he could, wanting to be honest, but also not wanting to hurt her. She sat on the couch, her hands resting on her bag, her silver eyes steady and thoughtful. Lyra didn't act like someone claiming ownership. She acted like someone holding on to hope. She explained how, as a child, Ethan's kindness had stayed in her memory. In her culture, a promise was the beginning of a partnership, not forced, but honored. She believed that he would come someday. When he didn't, she took the responsibility to find him herself. She traveled across colonies, asked for transport permission, and used her tribe's savings to reach Earth. Every word she spoke carried sincerity, and Ethan couldn't help feeling the weight of her journey. He tried to gently explain the misunderstanding. Lyra listened quietly. Her expression didn't break, but something in her eyes shifted, as if she was trying to understand a completely new rule of the universe. She wasn't angry. She was simply processing a truth she had never considered, that a promise might mean different things to different people. As they talked, Ethan realized she hadn't come with expectation. She had come with trust. When evening came, Lyra asked if she could stay nearby for some time. She said she needed to understand humans better before deciding anything. Ethan agreed, offering his guest room because she had nowhere else to go. She accepted with soft gratitude. Through the window, Ethan saw her stare at the stars before resting, as if searching for answers in the sky she crossed to reach him. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the unexpected weight of a simple joke, the cultural gap, the young woman who had traveled galaxies for a promise he barely remembered. And as he lay awake, he realized the story had only just begun. Part 2. Lyra woke early the next morning, long before Ethan. She walked quietly through the small house, touching nothing but observing everything carefully. She studied the framed photos, the small tools, the warm colors of Earth decor. The house was simple, but to her, it looked full of history. She noticed Ethan's books stacked near the table, manuals on engineering, maps of planetary routes, and a few old journals. She stood near the window, watching the morning light spread across the quiet neighborhood. It was peaceful, very different from her home, where the sky carried a soft violet hue and the wind sang through crystal leaves. When Ethan finally woke and entered the dining area, he found Lyra standing near the refrigerator, staring at the different containers inside. She looked confused and impressed at the same time. When she saw him, she smiled politely and moved aside, letting him access the food. Ethan prepared a simple breakfast, offering her a plate. Lyra accepted it, but every bite she took was slow and thoughtful as she tried to understand the taste, texture, and meaning. She finally said Earth food felt warm in the heart, but heavy in the body, which made Ethan laugh softly. Ethan decided to take her outside to see the town. He wanted her to understand Earth better and maybe feel less pressure about the old misunderstanding between them. Lyra followed him closely, her steps graceful but cautious. She wore simple clothing that Ethan had found for her soft, plain fabric, that didn't glow like the garments of her people, but still suited her well. When they walked through the street, people looked at her with curiosity, but Lyra remained calm. She wasn't shy. She simply observed everything, as if the world was a book she needed to study. They walked to a small park near a hill. Children were playing there, running in circles, laughing loudly. Lyra watched them, with a deep softness in her eyes. Ethan noticed she kept her distance, as if unsure whether she was allowed to step closer. She finally asked, "Humans grow fast. Do they forget their childhood the way you forgot your promise?" Ethan felt a sting in his chest. Her question wasn't meant to hurt him. It was simply honest curiosity. And it made him realize how deeply she remembered that day, on her moon. He explained gently, trying to choose simple words so she could understand. Humans don't forget important things, but sometimes we don't understand something the same way another person does. When I was young, I didn't know your people take promises so seriously. Lyra nodded slowly. In my tribe, a promise builds a path. Even if the path is long, you walk it. We believe every spoken word carries a piece of the heart. She touched the glowing leaf ring, still tucked in her bag. I was a child, but I believed you gave me something sacred. Not ownership, not control, just a connection. Her sincerity made Ethan feel even more responsible. He didn't want to hurt her trust. He didn't want her journeys or expectations to feel wasted. But he also didn't want to pretend something he didn't understand 18 years ago. He tried to explain that humans and her people viewed relationships differently. Lyra listened carefully, and each time she blinked, she processed new meaning. She wasn't stubborn or offended, she was learning. They spent the next hours walking through the town market. Lyra touched earth fabrics, smelled different spices, and asked endless questions about human customs. Ethan answered every one, noticing how quickly she adapted. She had a calm, yet strong presence that made people naturally step aside for her, as if sensing something unusual, yet gentle. Later, as they sat on a bench near a fountain, Lyra finally asked what she needed to know. If the promise was a mistake, what do you want now? Should I leave? Should I stay? I crossed many skies to reach you. I do not want to force you. But I need truth. Ethan felt the weight of her words. He didn't want her to leave alone after such a long journey, and he didn't want to send her back confused or disappointed. He told her she was welcome to stay until she felt she understood Earth well enough to decide her path. Lyra accepted this with a small nod, her silver eyes brightening with relief. But the peace was short-lived. That evening, a transport ship descended into the sky, glowing with unfamiliar symbols Ethan had never seen. Lyra stood instantly, her body tense. She whispered that the ship belonged to an elite group from her home, an authority that only traveled when something important needed attention. They had come for her. Ethan didn't know what it meant. Lyra didn't either. But the moment that ship cast its shadow over them, both realized the journey was far from finished. Part 3. The ship lowered silently, its surface shimmering with patterns that changed, like water reflecting sunlight. Lyra stood still, her breath steady but her posture alert. Ethan felt a ripple of worry move through him. He had seen many alien crafts in his engineering career, but none like this one. It looked ceremonial, almost sacred. When the ramp opened, 3 figures stepped out, each wearing long, flowing garments, woven with crystal threads that glowed softly. The tallest figure, a woman with pale silver markings across her arms, stepped forward. Lyra immediately bowed her head in respect. Ethan stayed still, unsure what the correct behavior was. The tall woman studied Ethan carefully, her eyes calm but powerful. Finally, she spoke in a melodic voice that carried authority. I am Saren, elder of the moonlit lineage. We come for Lyra, daughter of our tribe. Ethan sensed tension in Lyra's posture. She wasn't scared, but she was uncertain. Saren turned to her and said, You left our moon without council permission. You traveled across the void to seek the human who made the bond. Ethan felt the air tighten. He wanted to speak, to explain the misunderstanding, but Saren raised a hand, gently silencing him. This matter concerns the old traditions. A spoken promise accepted with sincerity becomes a binding signal. When the child grows to adulthood, the promised meeting must occur. If not honored, the balance between 2 paths is considered broken. Lyra stepped forward. Elder Saren, I did not force him. I only came to understand the meaning of the promise. Humans do not treat words the way we do. The bond was unintentional. Saren's expression softened. Child, your journey shows courage, but the traditions are ancient and woven deeply in our stories. You crossed many skies for a promise he did not mean. Ethan stepped forward, choosing his words carefully. I never wanted to disrespect your culture. I was young and didn't understand. But Lyra didn't come to demand anything. She came to learn, and I want to help her. She deserves that. Thanks for watching, and everyone, and the next one for watching. Saren studied him for a long moment. Ethan stood firm, not out of fear, but respect. Finally, Saren nodded. You speak with honesty. Perhaps the misunderstanding can be resolved through a new path. She turned to Lyra. Child, do you wish to return home immediately? My Leng today. 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 Lyra looked down, then at Ethan, then back at Saren. I wish to stay a little longer. I need to understand the human heart before making any decision. Saren considered this. After a moment she stepped aside, allowing Lyra to choose freely. The other two elders remained silent, their eyes watching everything carefully. We will remain near your planet, Saren said. When you are ready to return or make your choice, call us. The elders returned to their ship. The craft lifted silently into the sky and vanished into the atmosphere like a drifting cloud. Ethan and Lyra stood there for a long moment, unsure how to process what had just happened. When they returned to the house, Ethan offered her tea. Lyra held the cup gently and stared into the warm steam. Her voice was soft when she finally spoke. I did not know they would come. I did not know my journey would worry them so deeply. Ethan nodded. You're important to your people. They want to protect you. Lyra smiled faintly. And you? Do you want to send me away? Ethan shook his head. No. I want you to learn whatever you need, and I want to understand you too. Lyra looked relieved. She began to open up more over the next few days. She told Ethan about her home fields of glowing flowers, nights full of crystal winds, and a sky with 2 moons that danced like siblings. She explained how her people valued bonds, how each promise became a story woven into their history. Ethan listened, fascinated. And Lyra listened to him as well. She learned why humans joked, why they sometimes protected their hearts with laughter, and why not every word meant forever. As they spent time together, something gentle and steady formed between them, not forced by a promise, but built through real understanding. They cooked meals together, walked through town, explored forests, and talked late into the night about differences and similarities between their worlds. But not everything was peaceful. Unknown to them, the elders' arrival had attracted attention. A shadowy Earth organization responsible for monitoring alien activity detected the ship. They began tracking Lyra. As days passed, unmarked vehicles appeared near Ethan's neighborhood. Silent drones hovered overhead. Someone wanted answers about Lyra's tribe and the ceremony ship that had visited. One evening, as Ethan and Lyra walked home from the park, a drone drifted too close. Its scanner aimed directly at Lyra. She stepped back in alarm. Ethan quickly pulled her into a covered walkway, shielding her. The drone retreated, but Ethan knew this was the beginning of something dangerous. Lyra sensed it too. Her eyes darkened with concern. They will not leave us alone, she said softly. Humans fear what they do not understand, just as some of my people fear your world. Ethan realized things were becoming more complicated than a simple misunderstanding about a promise. Now, forces from both sides were watching them, and the quiet life he once knew was slipping away piece by piece. But he also knew one thing clearly: he wasn't going to let Lyra face any of this alone. Part 4. The following morning brought tension thick enough to feel in the air. Ethan noticed the unmarked vehicle parked farther down the street. Lyra sensed it too, even without looking directly at it. Her people had keen instincts, especially when it came to danger. Ethan suggested they stay indoors, but Lyra believed hiding would only worsen suspicion. They needed clarity, not fear. Still, Ethan made preparations. He gathered tools, emergency supplies, communication devices, and anything that might help them if things turned difficult. Lyra watched him, her expression calm but touched with sadness. You protect without promise, she said softly. This action speaks louder than the one you gave in childhood. Ethan didn't know what to say. He simply continued, trying to keep her safe without turning his home into a fortress. By afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Ethan tensed. Lyra stood behind him, ready but silent. When he opened the door, 2 individuals in plain black suits stood outside. They flashed identification from the Earth Interplanetary Security Division. They weren't aggressive, but their presence carried authority. We need to ask you both some questions, the lead agent said. An unknown alien vessel entered Earth's atmosphere recently, and recordings show it interacted with you. Ethan stepped forward, shielding Lyra slightly. She has done nothing wrong. The ship came to check on her. She's a peaceful visitor. The agents didn't raise their voices. They didn't threaten, but they insisted Lyra come with them for questioning. Ethan refused. The lead agent's expression tightened. We're not here to harm her. But we cannot allow unidentified extraterrestrial visitors to move freely without documentation. Lyra spoke before Ethan could. I will go. But Ethan comes with me. Her calmness surprised everyone. Ethan wanted to argue, but she placed a gentle hand on his arm. Running makes danger grow. Facing truth reduces it. They entered the agent's vehicle and were taken to a secure facility nearby. The building was clean, cold, and filled with technology. Lyra was separated for a private interview, but Ethan insisted on staying close, waiting behind a transparent security panel where he could still see her. The interview was long. The agents asked about her tribe, the old promise traditions, the elder's visit, and her reason for coming to Earth. Lyra answered honestly and gracefully. She never raised her voice. She didn't show fear. Her honesty impressed even the stern agents. Meanwhile, Ethan answered questions separately. He explained the misunderstanding, the childhood joke, and how he had welcomed Lyra not out of obligation, but respect. The agents seemed satisfied but still cautious. Hours later, the head of the division arrived, a composed woman with sharp eyes. She reviewed the reports slowly before approaching Ethan and Lyra together. You two created quite a disturbance, she said calmly. Not by wrongdoing, but by misunderstanding. Your bond, whatever its nature, has triggered diplomatic concern. Ethan swallowed. The director turned to Lyra. Your elders are waiting in orbit. They contacted us. They said they will accept your decision, whether it is to stay or return. Lyra grew still. Ethan felt the weight of that moment settle heavily around them. It was a choice she had been slowly preparing for ever since she arrived. The director continued. We won't force you to leave, but we must respect interplanetary customs. If you stay, you must sign Earth's peaceful residency agreement. If you leave, we will grant you safe passage. Lyra looked at Ethan. For a long moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Her eyes were soft and thoughtful. When I came here, I thought I was walking the path of a promise. But humans build paths through choice. I understand that now. Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady. Lyra, whatever you choose, I'll support you. She studied him for several seconds before answering. I choose to stay. Not because of a promise from childhood, but because I want to learn more. About humans. About you. About myself. About myself. About myself. The director nodded, pleased with the clarity. Papers were prepared. The moment she finished, the facility lights dimmed slightly, an alert that a large object had entered the atmosphere. Saren's ship. It descended slowly, far above the facility. The elders came to witness Lyra's choice themselves. When the ship hovered overhead, a holographic projection of Saren appeared. Child of the moonlit lineage, Saren said with dignity. Your choice is now woven into your story. Walk your path with honor. Lyra bowed deeply. Thank you, Elder. The hologram faded, and the ship rose back toward the stars, leaving Earth in peace. When Ethan and Lyra stepped outside the facility, the evening sun painted the sky gold. The world felt new again, as if a circle had closed and another had opened. Lyra stood beside Ethan, her silver eyes reflecting the warm light. I am free to choose now, she said softly. Ethan smiled gently. Then choose whatever future feels right to you. She looked at him with quiet certainty. I choose to walk beside you as long as our paths stay true. There was no pressure, no old promise, no misunderstanding, just two people from different worlds beginning something honest and real. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And for the first time since she arrived on Earth, Lyra felt the promise she carried for 18 years transform into something new, something chosen. A beginning,